Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Thursday. You ready for the weekend? My name is Pamela Pedrick. I'm a certified nurse. I'm a nurse holistic health coach. If you're not familiar with me, I help women, busy women such as yourself, to get to their optimal health and healthy weight for their unique bodies via the 5 rights, which is the right nourishment, the right movement, the right hormonal balance, the right environment, and most importantly, the right mind or mindset. Yes, we need to address all those pillars um, to order to not only lose weight but keep it off. But today, let's talk about buyer beware. So, if you are going gluten free or you are gluten free, maybe you're pretty new to the journey, maybe you're contemplating it. I've got a buyer beware because I want to educate you today because I've known this, but it really came into reality for me unknowingly because I just didn't read my package with that. So, because I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. So I'm here to educate you so you can be buyer beware. By the way, I've got a free download for you. So stay tuned to the end so you can get your hands on that, let you know what it is. So let's talk about, are you trying to go gluten free? Now, a lot of people, now there's difference between celiac and gluten intolerance. Celiac, like your body is like, you cannot do any form of gluten at all. Like it really wreaks havoc with your system. Gluten intolerance is a little bit more subtle because the signs and symptoms of gluten intolerance we can attribute to other things that are going on in our life or other foods that we're eating and not knowingly know that, not knowingly know. I think I just made a new phrase there. And unknowingly, like it's the gluten. So this was my own story, and I love bread. I love pasta. So I was a gluten fiend, and it wasn't until I went to a retreat where they serve you the food, and they just happened to be gluten free because a lot of their participants were gluten intolerant or had celiac. Just the nature of the retreat I was going to. So they just provided gluten free bread, anything that would have potentially gluten in it. Pancakes, waffles. It was gluten free. And at the end of the week, I noticed, oh my goodness, I feel really great. Like I'm not as tired. I'm not bloated. Like my stomach had gone down. I'm like, oh, well, what's different? I'm like, yeah, there were healthy foods, but been eating healthy. But I'm like, oh, it's gluten free. I have a love, love, love bread and pasta. I always had bread and pasta. Always, always, always. So when I started to make the connection between gluten in my body, it just happened to be I went gluten free, unintentionally. It was just the nature of the retreat. They were serving all gluten free foods that I noticed a difference in my body. So I thought, well, let me continue this when I get home. So I had been getting gluten out of my eating. But then life happens as it does with most of us because I wasn't working on my mindset at that time. I wasn't working on my mind and my thoughts, my beliefs, my identity about myself. So I went back to eating gluten. Now, fast forward, I've been eating gluten again, and then I would slowly taper off and then get it back in again. And I was like having this love hate relationship because I didn't want to feel deprived, right? Because one of the things about going gluten free is you're like, well, what is there to eat? There is a lot more available than when I first was going gluten free. I mean, goodness, there's so much more available to you. And so, with going gluten free, you have to make sure that if it's any package, if it just says gluten free, it can have a cross contamination or gluten, and it can also actually still have gluten in it. You need to look for products that say certified gluten free. It'll be like a little label on the front or on the back. It has to be certified gluten free. That's when you know there's definitely no gluten in it, no gluten at all, and no cross contamination of gluten. I'll give you an example. I happen to have these cough drops. Okay. I don't do cough drops a whole lot, but every so often I live in Florida. My allergies get really haywire and I'm just coughing a lot, especially at bedtime. It tends to hit me because of the pollen buildup and all that for the day. So I was like, let me try these cough drops, right? Someone had gifted them to me and I didn't think anything of it. I just happened to do 2 because the cough was just like, I was really irritated with my allergies. And then the whole eyes start dripping and everything starts dripping. So I had 2. I woke up the next morning like, man, I have a headache. What's going on? I'm like, am I drinking enough water? How's my stress? How's my sleep? Like I'm doing a checklist of things that I typically do. Like, why do I have this headache? And then I looked on the back of these cough drops and it says, here's what they say. Yes, we're gluten free. These cough drops contain less than 20 parts per million of gluten. Because why? Because the glucose syrup is from wheat. In the ingredients, it actually says glucose syrup from wheat. Now, I got to give them kudos for saying it's from wheat, because not a lot of people, not a lot of products will tell you, well, our glucose syrup is from wheat. So I got to give them kudos for that, okay? However, this is why you have to be certified gluten-free if you have any issues with gluten whatsoever. Because here's how the FDA gets away with this stuff. Here's how they get away with this. It's all by the FDA. And they explain it on here. I'm like, well, kudos for them for explaining it. So I thought I'd share it with you today. So yes, we're gluten-free. Here's why. It's because they contain less than 20 parts per million, or ppm, of gluten. Pursuant to FDA regulations, products containing less than 20 ppm of gluten are gluten-free. Not according to my body. It's not gluten-free according to my body. My body's going, ding, 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 gluten, gluten, give you a headache, or I'll be bloated. So my body always tells me when I have gluten, because either I get a headache or I get nauseous the next day, but most often it's that immediate bloating, like I'm 5 months pregnant, and I'm not pregnant. I feel my pants are getting tight. I look down, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm bloated. What had gluten in it? And even the products they had that said that they are gluten-free, but they do not have their certified gluten-free symbol, have gluten in it. Why? Because according to the FDA, as long as it has less than 20 parts per million of gluten, they can say they are gluten-free. However, certified gluten-free and having that label on it, there's no bit of gluten whatsoever in that product. So if you are on a gluten-free journey, be mindful of this, because you don't know what you don't know. So I'm here to educate you. By the way, if you're like, hey, I think gluten might be an issue, or I don't know, potentially, by the way, I've never run across every single woman I've worked with when we did the food intolerance part of my program, gluten was an intolerance for every single woman. Why? Because we've bastardized the gluten in our country. Realize you go over to Europe and you eat pasta over there, you don't feel nearly the same impact that it has on there. And why are we going gluten-free? Like, what's the issue with gluten? Yeah, you might have some symptoms, but also for those who don't have symptoms outright, it causes leaky gut. So leaky gut, think of, you got we're coming to summertime. So maybe you have a hose connected to your house, right? And maybe you haven't used it all winter long, but when you turn it on, you start to see little things of water coming out in the hose. You got some leaks in it, right? It's got damage from winter. Well, that's our gut, leaky gut. Gluten causes little holes in our gut. So now that what should be staying on our gut is leaking out. Yes, even bacteria. And then what should be more processed so that we can uptake like the good things, like our nutrients and our proteins and things like that, they get leaked out too. And then we're not uptaking it because it's not in our system to be able to be in our body. So leaky gut causes a whole host of issues, but gluten is a number one reason why we have leaky gut. There's other things. There's artificial sweeteners and other things that jack up our gut as well, but gluten's a big one because it actually causes little holes in our intestines, in our bowel, in our guts, which 80% of our immune response is developed in our gut. Serotonin, which helps us to feel better, is in the gut. Gut is our second brain. So if you're feeling kind of brain foggy, cognitive, like you're like, oh, I can't really think clearly, potentially gut issues. So, which is why even if you don't have celiac, kind of see how gluten impacts you. So I do have that handout that is free. Just simply comment gluten in the comments below, and I'll reach out to you to give you the how to go gluten-free guideline, which does go into what you need to look for in products to make sure that it is truly gluten-free. So, and this is a big part of what I do, is I help women determine their food intolerances, of which gluten is definitely a big food intolerance for a lot of women out there. Which, by the way, remember I said it was on my gluten journey, but I completely ditched it. I lost like 5 pounds within a week, like completely ditched it. And by the way, I haven't had the migraines, the headaches, other than when I had cross-contamination of gluten that I was having. I was having at least a headache every day, and a migraine. I was having 2 migraines a week. That's how bad it had gotten worse before. Maybe be 1 a month. And now I was at the point where I was like 2 a week, and I'm like, something's going on. And it was food intolerance driven. Now, if you saw my pictures that I posted yesterday, my before and after, You can see my face, how inflamed I was, like how poofy, how fat, I'm going to say a fat face, right? That was all inflammation driven. Food intolerance causes inflammation in the body. Why? Because it causes stress. Stress causes cortisol to come into play. Cortisol is a sugar. So now we got blood sugar issues that are coming, and you don't need to be diabetic in order to have blood sugar dysregulation. It can be food intolerance driven. So when I was on, and this was, the gluten was prior, but then even the past, it was 2 years ago in July. It'll be 2 years in July, or 2 years. I don't know. It's been at least 2 years that I was on my food intolerance journey, meaning I found what my food intolerances were, which is driven by a health issue that not a lot of medical providers know about. I don't think anyone knows about it. It's more of a functional medicine provider knows about the specific health issue, of which I have, and a lot of people do unknowingly. As soon as I got those food intolerances out of my way of eating, which it was a lot of healthy foods. It was avocado, it was eggs, it was a lot of things. It was pineapple, it was strawberry. My mom looked at me going, "What can you eat?" I'm like, no. We're not going to manifest the deprivation. We're going to say this is Pamela's opportunity to eat different vegetables and fruits and things and to play with it. So, yes, food intolerances. So gluten is definitely a big food intolerance for a lot of people. You don't necessarily need to be celiac in order to have gluten wreak havoc on your body. Sometimes the signs and symptoms we attribute to other things that are going on in our life or in our body. So if you want the How to Go Gluten-Free guide, it's free for you. Just simply comment the word gluten, and then I will reach out to you and get that into your hands. You can download it, read it, all that good stuff. So once again, the FDA has lots of loopholes, one of them being gluten. So I don't know, I've got to give them props. At least it didn't say on the front gluten-free, because you'll see a lot of products that'll say gluten-free right on the front, and people are like, oh yeah, I'm going gluten-free, let me grab it. But at least I got to give them kudos for that. And they did say that their glucose syrup was from wheat. Got to give them kudos for that, right? So, and then they explained why they can say they are gluten-free. They give the explanation, which once again, kudos for them. So I thought I'd share that with you. So I know now to no longer have these cough drops, or at least do one, see how that works, rather than two, so I don't have the headache tomorrow. All right. By the way, if you want to know what it's like to work with me and my experience of being 20 years in this healing work of helping women get to their optimal health and healthy weight for their bodies, and to love themselves and their beautiful bodies, no matter their weight, their size, I highly, highly recommend reach out to me, get on a quick 15-minute call that I can give you your next best step, so that I can give you some quick wins and help you to get the results that you've been trying to get. To your health. Have a great day, everyone.